The storm was merciless. Wind howled like a wounded beast, shaking the trees with violent rage. Rain poured in relentless sheets, hammering against the asphalt, drowning the world in chaos. Lightning tore through the sky, illuminating the skeletal remains of an old bridge, its wooden beams rotting, its steel supports rusted and crumbling. And there, on the very edge of its failing structure, stood a lone dog. A trembling silhouette against the raging night, fur plastered to its frail body, eyes wide with fear. Below, the river churned and roared, swallowing fallen branches and debris, dragging them mercilessly downstream. The water level had risen dangerously high, its force strong enough to rip trees from their roots. The dog teetered on the crumbling edge, claws scraping against slick wood. Another gust of wind sent a tremor through its fragile frame. The bridge shuddered. The dog let out a desperate whimper, barely audible over the storm. It took an uncertain step back, but there was nowhere left to go. The structure beneath its paws creaked ominously. A loose plank broke away, vanishing into the abyss below. Another bolt of lightning split the sky, and in that brief flash a pair of headlights cut through the darkness. Alex had been driving home when the storm worsened, forcing him to slow down on the winding road. His knuckles were white against the steering wheel, tension gripping his chest. The downpour was relentless, his windshield wipers struggling to keep up. Then, for just a second, his headlights caught something. Movement at the far end of the decaying bridge. A dog. His breath hitched. It wasn't just any stray wandering the streets. This animal was in real danger. Without thinking, Alex slammed the brakes, tires skidding on the wet pavement. The car fishtailed before coming to a jolting stop. His heartbeat pounded against his ribs as he yanked the door open, stepping directly into the storm. Cold rain lashed against his skin, drenching him instantly. He sprinted toward the bridge, boots splashing through puddles. Wind roared in his ears, but his focus remained locked on the terrified animal ahead. As he neared, the dog turned its head. Their eyes met. Fear. Trust. A silent plea. Alex held out his hands, crouching slightly, trying to make himself less threatening. "Hey, buddy," he called over the storm, voice firm but gentle. "It's okay, I'm here to help." The dog's tail tucked between its legs. It took a hesitant step forward, then another. A spark of hope flared in Alex's chest, then a deafening crack. The bridge groaned as a section of its support gave way. The dog's paws slipped. A panicked yelp echoed through the night as its body lurched forward. Claws scrambled for purchase, but there was nothing solid left to grip. Alex lunged. His fingers brushed against damp fur. And then, the bridge collapsed. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze. Wood splintered, steel twisted, and the dog's form disappeared into the darkness. Alex's breath caught in his throat. No. No, no, no. The river below swallowed everything in its path, and now it had claimed the dog. Without a second thought, he leapt after it. The river was merciless. A churning, roaring beast, swollen from days of relentless rain. It devoured everything in its path, branches, debris, the very earth from the riverbanks. And now it had claimed a life, a desperate, terrified life. The dog fought to stay afloat, his soaked fur weighing him down as the current tossed him like a rag doll. His head bobbed under, then resurfaced, mouth gasping for air, paws thrashing against the surge. Alex ran along the embankment, his lungs burning, heart slamming against his ribs. The shape in the water, no, the life in the water, was barely visible in the foaming rage, but Alex's eyes never left him. Not for a second. He couldn't. He wouldn't. Each misstep down the slippery slope sent stones tumbling into the river, swallowed instantly, lost forever. His boots skidded, barely finding purchase, but he forced himself forward. The dog was being carried downstream at a terrifying speed. Any second now, he'd be gone. Not today. Not today, damn it. Then, the dog collided with something. yelping as his claws scrambled for purchase. A fallen tree, half submerged, jutting from the water like a skeletal hand. A miracle, but a fragile one. The dog clung to the branch, trembling, chest heaving. He was exhausted. The current clawed at him, tugging, demanding. One slip, and he would be swept away again, if he even had the strength left to fight. Alex's fingers curled into fists. There was no time to think, only to act. He shrugged off his jacket, his radio, anything that could weigh him down. Then he took a breath that tasted like fear and dove. The cold was a violent slap, stealing the air from his lungs. The river pulled at him instantly, but he fought against it, arms slicing through the water, every muscle in his body burning. The tree loomed ahead. The dog, God, the dog, was still holding on, but barely. His legs shook, his eyes wide with panic. Alex's mind screamed at him to go faster. Flashbacks crashed over him like the waves against his body. A different dog, a different river, a different time. He was 10 years old, standing on the edge of a dock. The family dog, Daisy, paddling happily in the lake, her golden fur bright against the blue. His father laughing, telling him to call her back. Then the boat, a speeding boat that shouldn't have been there, that shouldn't have been going that fast. Daisy never made it back to shore. He remembered the helplessness, the way his mother's screams rang in his ears for days after, the way his father had held him so tight it hurt. He wouldn't feel that again. He wouldn't watch another dog be taken by the water. Not today. He reached the tree just as the dog's paws slipped. Alex lunged. His fingers grazed fur, just for a second before the dog fell. The river roared as it swallowed him whole. Alex dove deeper, the world around him turning black and cold. The current dragged him downward, twisting, relentless. His hands groped blindly, reaching, searching. Then, fur. He grasped it, wrapping his arms around the dog's body, pulling him close. The dog struggled weakly, but he had no fight left. Just fear, just the last remnants of life clinging desperately to the chance of survival. Alex kicked upwards, his lungs screaming. The surface felt impossibly far away, a distant world he might never reach again. But he had to. For the dog. For himself. His head burst above water, a ragged gasp tearing from his throat. The river fought harder now, angry, unwilling to release its prey. The shore was too far. The embankment too steep. But the tree, it was their only chance. Alex latched onto the broken trunk with one arm, the other holding the dog tight against his chest. He could feel the weak rise and fall of the dog's breath against his own racing heart. It wasn't over yet. They weren't safe yet. Then a crack. Deep. Splintering. Final. The branch supporting them gave way. For a breathless second, they hung there in time, suspended between salvation and oblivion. Then the river pulled them under once more. The churning water roared like a beast, swallowing sound, swallowing hope. Alex's breath came in ragged gasps as he flailed against the relentless current. Every muscle burned, but his eyes stayed locked on the swirling foam where the dog had vanished. Seconds stretched into eternity. "Come on," he rasped, his voice drowned by the river's fury. "Come on!" His heart pounded against his ribs like a drum of war. Was he too late? Had the river already claimed the dog? He lunged forward again, hands raking through the frigid water, searching. His fingers met nothing but empty currents. Then, a yelp. Faint. Distant. Alex's head whipped around. His eyes scanned downstream, where the water twisted and frothed like a wild animal. A broken log bobbed in the chaos. Clinging to it, barely alive, was the dog. Relief and terror crashed into him in equal measure. The dog was alive. But they were both being dragged toward the waterfall. The monstrous drop loomed ahead, mist rising from the abyss like the breath of some ancient, waiting predator. No, not like this. Adrenaline surged through Alex, overriding the exhaustion threatening to pull him under. He kicked hard, forcing his body through the current, arms stretching toward the log. The dog shivered, eyes wide with terror, claws digging into the soaked bark. It wouldn't last much longer. One chance. Alex lunged. His fingers scraped wet wood, slipping. He gritted his teeth and lunged again, muscles screaming in protest. This time, contact. He gripped the log with everything he had, dragging himself closer, ignoring the way the rapids tried to tear him apart. His free hand reached for the dog, fingers curling into sodden fur. "I got you," he gasped. The dog whimpered, pressing weakly against his chest. Alex's arms locked around its trembling body. And then he saw it, a collar, a rusted tag. His breath hitched, his fingers shook as they brushed over the corroded metal, clearing away years of grime. The letters, barely visible, sent an electric shock through his veins. The name. No. Impossible. It was the same as his childhood dog. The one that had vanished years ago. The one that had been lost to a storm, to the river, to the night Alex had never been able to forget. His throat closed, his chest constricted. 1,000 memories crashed over him like the rapids themselves. It couldn't be. It just couldn't. The dog blinked up at him, eyes full of something Alex couldn't name. Recognition, hope, destiny. But there was no time to process, no time to think. The roar of the waterfall filled the air. They were seconds away from the edge. Adrenaline surges through Alex's veins like fire. The roar of the waterfall drowns out every other sound as he fights against the relentless current, his muscles burning with exhaustion. The dog is barely conscious, its limp body threatening to slip from Alex's grasp. With one final, desperate burst of strength, he kicks toward the jagged rocks at the shore. The moment his fingers brush against solid ground, a fresh wave slams into them, nearly tearing the dog away. But Alex refuses to let go. With a guttural cry, he hauls the dog onto the rocks, collapsing beside it just as the waterfall crashes behind them, obliterating the space they occupied only seconds ago. For a long moment, he lies there, chest heaving, rain mixing with the sweat and river water on his face. His vision blurs, the world spinning in chaos. But then, silence. The storm still rages, but in this moment, everything else fades. Emotional climax. Alex forces himself to sit up, his entire body trembling. His hands move instinctively, checking the dog's frail body. Cold. Too cold. He presses his palm against its chest. A heartbeat. Weak, but there. He lets out a shaky breath, his relief short-lived as his fingers brush against something metallic on the dog's soaked fur. A collar. With shaking hands, he turns the tag over, and then the world tilts. No, it can't be. His breath catches as he stares at the name etched into the metal, his mind reeling. It's impossible. His vision tunnels as memories slam into him. Laughter, muddy paws, the warmth of a presence that once made his world whole. And then, loss. The hollow ache of searching, of calling into the emptiness, of believing he was gone forever. But here he is, the same deep eyes, the faint scar on his paw. Against all odds, it's him, his lost best friend. Unforgettable ending. The dog stirs, a faint shiver running through its body, then a twitch, a slow, hesitant blink. Alex holds his breath as those familiar eyes open, clouded with exhaustion but filled with something undeniable. Recognition. The tail moves, just a fraction, then again. A slow, uncertain wag. A choked sob escapes Alex's throat as he pulls his friend close, burying his face in the soaked fur. Tears mix with the rain as he whispers, voice breaking, "I found you." The dog lets out a soft, wheezing whimper, the same sound he used to make when he curled up beside Alex after a long day. Alex laughs, the sound raw and disbelieving, pressing his forehead against the dog's. "You held on," he whispers. "You waited." Closing scene. The storm has passed. Golden light spills over the horizon, washing the world in soft hues of warmth. The river has calmed, its surface reflecting the dawn like a promise. Alex sits on the shore, his arm draped around his best friend, the steady rise and fall of the dog's chest grounding him. For the first time in years, the emptiness inside him is gone. They sit together, watching the world awaken. A new beginning, this time forever.